What I'm going to talk about today is how we can harvest what we have in our garden and then make medicine from that. What you want to grow in your garden, as far as medicine, it's really just figuring out what you like, or also what you need. If you have respiratory ailments, or you have skin ailments, or digestive ailments, you find herbs that can help treat those issues. A lot of herbs that you can find in the forest or in the field that are wild, and you could go foraging. We just have a couple months where we could really harvest a lot of things, and so learning how to preserve it is really important. Winter, when you really need immune support and you don't have the elderberry on the branch, you could have an elderberry syrup, and that's a great antiviral. One of the simplest ways is drying. There are two ways that I dry, and one is just simply by hanging. So when you harvest your plant material, you want to have the stems clean of any leaves, because if there's a bunch of leaves here and you tie it, you could get mold. Get the leaves off the bottom of the stem, bunch it together, and make a nice sized bunch, but you don't want it to be too big because it needs ventilation. And then tie it and hang it in a place that is shady, that's dry, and that has good ventilation. You want it to dry like within about 4 days. You don't want it to take too long, because if it's out in the air for too long, it'll start to lose its potency. You want to dry it as quickly as you can, but make sure that it's dry, right? Because if you put it away and it's a little wet, it could go moldy. So make sure it's totally dry. And then what I do is put it in a mason jar and then store it in the pantry or any cool, dry, dark place. You never want to dry in the sun, and you never want to store it in the sun. Always in a shady spot. Another way is just get a screen and dry it on the screen. Once it's dried, we do what's called garbling, which simply means removing the leaf from the stem or from the more woody material. So lemon balm is a great antiviral. It's also a nervine, so it helps with anxiety, helps with focus, mental clarity. It's also great for digestion. You could dry this, and then come winter, make a tea with it. When you make a tea with a soft part of the plant, the aerial part of the plant, it's called an infusion. Basically, you boil water and then put the hot water over the plant material, and then you let it steep. What you want to do with the plant material, as much as possible, chop it up so that the cell walls are broken, and so as much surface area as possible is in contact with whatever your solvent is. The solvent is what is extracting the medicinal property from the plant. It's also called the menstruum. One is water, and an infusion is the soft parts of the plant, like flower petals or leaves. And if we're using harder parts like bark or roots, we make what's called a decoction. And a decoction is simmering it for a period of time. Cinnamon bark, ginger root chopped up, black peppercorns. You put that in a pot, bring it to a boil, and then simmer for 20 minutes. Same thing, you want to get as much as possible, as much surface area of the plant as possible, so grinding it or chopping it up. You can make a really long infusion too, for example with nettle leaf. Nettles are like the seaweed of the earth. They're so high in minerals. Raspberry leaf, also high in minerals. But what I do with nettle leaf is I'll bring a pot of water to a boil, turn it off, put a couple handfuls of the nettle leaf in, put the lid on, and then let it steep for 8 hours, overnight. Calcium, magnesium, iron, and that's a really good mineral-rich drink. So it's really important to think, what are the properties of this plant? What's going on with my body? What do I need? And how do I want to prepare the plant to best help me, whether it's for nutrition, like as a daily tonic, or if it's for something that's more acute, like you have a respiratory infection and you dried some thyme and you're going to make some thyme tea, or if it's something that's more chronic that you're dealing with. One option for using a solvent is water. Another is alcohol. So ethyl alcohol extracts medicinal properties really well from herbs. When you do that, it's called a tincture. Any of the culinary herbs, you could actually make an oil, and it could just be used as a food, right? That you're adding as a salad dressing or adding to your food with oregano, rosemary, sage. You could also make it so it's topical. So you can make a calendula oil or a comfrey oil. We have glycerin. Not everyone could drink alcohol. So glycerin is a sweeter substance that acts similarly to ethyl alcohol in extracting. We can use honey, another sweet substance. Vinegar is another one, which is really good. Vinegar has an affinity for the respiratory system. So a lot of times when I'm thinking of winter remedies and helping with preventing respiratory infection, I'll add vinegar, right? Bug bites have venom. You're gonna have a bit of inflammation and a histamine reaction. You wanna draw out that venom, draw out the inflammation, if there's pus or infection, or even if you have a splinter and you wanna draw that out because you can't get it with a tweezer, anything you wanna draw out, plantain is amazing at doing that, astringing and drawing agent. As much as possible, breaking down the cell wall. So what I'll do is I'll just chop it up with a knife first, and then you just mash it. Yeah, so you just smash it up so that it's kind of like a sludge, just green mash. You could do the same thing with yarrow, but that poultice is used to stop bleeding. And then we have comfrey, which is amazing for cell regeneration. Right now we're making a poultice. We're about to make an infusion. So Tara just put a bunch of leaves in here. There's lemon balm, there's spearmint, and I'm gonna add a little bit of raspberry. So raspberry because it's silver underneath, super high in minerals, just like the nettle leaf. So I'm just putting that in there, but actually if you want it to be more medicinal, it's good to just, like we talked about, chop it up. And then we could put some calendula flowers in there. And lavender is great too. A good nervine and antispasmodic and a good digestive. So this is a fresh herb infusion. Just simply adding the hot water to your whatever you picked. You could make this with, raspberry leaf. You could put the yarrow flowers in there as well. You could put plantain, you could put comfrey. All of these things are medicinal. There's some plants that, you just want to use the aerial parts. Other plants, you just want to use the root. So it's good to know your plant. Here I have some calendula blossoms that I harvested this morning. One thing I do if I'm drying calendula is I will put all the blossoms on the screen and then just, put the screen over, 2 chairs and just let them dry, and then store the dried flowers, and in the winter or other times use it as a tea or use it to make an oil. But right now what I'm going to do is make a tincture, and we use the tincture as a wound wash. Calendula is an amazing antiseptic, and it's also a vulnerary, which means it helps to heal wounds. What I do is I fill the jar. There is a difference as far as how much alcohol you would add, whether it's fresh or dried. Often if it's fresh, it's a 1-to-2 ratio. If it's dried, it's a 1-to-5 ratio. So there are methods to use where you're measuring everything. However, the Falk method is just simply cover the herb, whatever it is, fresh or dried. And you just got to keep on checking it for the first couple of days, because what's going to happen is the plant material is really going to saturate with the alcohol. It's vodka. You could use any alcohol. It's best that it's between, it's about 50% alcohol, so 100 proof. Make sure that the herb is covered. And if I check back in just about 5 minutes, I'll have to add more alcohol. So you just kind of check. It's really, really important that it's totally covered with alcohol. If I were making a calendula oil, which is also great because that's great topically, I would do the same thing, but I would use olive oil. If it's an oil, you want to store it in a warm place. Always shady. UV light degrades the plant material. So what I would do is every day shake it, starting out, look at it every day, make sure that it's covered. But it's going to reach, the plant will reach its saturation point, and then you'll know after a couple of days that it's, you know, it'll be fine. You won't have to add any more alcohol. Leave this then for about 4 weeks, at least. You know, you could leave it for 2 months. 4 weeks come by, then I grab, you know, just a bowl. You take your cheesecloth, you put it over your strainer, you dump out, you know, your tincture, and then you twist. Twist, twist, twist. Keep twisting so that all of that good medicine comes out. It's also strained through here, and then you have it in your bowl. We always like to store long-term in tinted bottles because it helps with preserving the, you know, the medicine. So funnel and then pour it in. The way that I make the oxymel is with a food mill. So simply milling the berries will give a really nice juice. Apple cider vinegar. Everything that I do, I always just make it to taste, you know, what tastes good. So probably about like 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar for that amount. You know, this is just raw honey. It's really interesting when you add the honey and the apple cider vinegar. It just kind of really, there's a certain harmony to that with the sea berry juice, that it just kind of makes it pack more of a punch, is what I noticed, that if you just have a straight juice. We then will put this in a like a mason jar. It could be a 2-ounce or 4-ounce mason jar. It stores in the refrigerator for about 6 months.